basically the presentation is divided quickly into what is enshrined in the UNCRC, which all of us are familiar with, the Indian scenario, the evolution of child participation in ChildLine in India, and child participation as it exists in India, which are very, very good models in other organizations, and what are the challenges we are facing and how do we propose to take it forward. I think it's very clearly enshrined in the UNCRC, and which most of our countries have ratified. And when we talk of child participation, we are really talking about the need to inform, to be informed, to participate in cultural life, to express our views. I think Letitia already mentioned a lot of them, and it's clearly put together in the slides, so I'm not going to repeat myself. India clearly ratified the UNCRC in 1989, and yet in India, culturally, there is a huge, like in many other countries around South Asia and other countries, there's a culture of silence surrounding our children. When adults or elders are considered the opinion makers, children are not even allowed to speak. So participation therefore becomes even more challenging in such a culture. At present in India, there is no specific legislation that mentions the right to child participation. However, the Constitution, as you know, clearly confers expression of fundamental rights to everyone. And to that extent, children definitely have their fundamental rights, and I think part of ChildLine in India has been how to take that forward. Just before we go, there's of course no clear definition of what child participation is, and for our understanding, we've just put it down that in practical terms, the ways of incorporating the specific needs and views of children into decision-making processes within the context of what is possible institutionally and culturally. Because a lot of what we mean in Europe may not be the same degree of participation, and I think that's something we have to take into account when we are talking of participation. ChildLine began with the needs from the street children, especially the street children of Mumbai, where the first ChildLine began. And just to translate quickly, ChildLine Mera, ChildLine Tumhara, ChildLine Hamara, ChildLine Hum Sabka mean it belongs to you, it belongs to me, it belongs to everyone. Because unless we work together, and the children being a fundamental part of it, the service does not play out for all its potential. 1098 and some of the early voices that shaped the process of ChildLine in India. I think some of it you can read. Children were very, very clear stakeholders in the process. They insisted that there are many services, and therefore our service should be something that we need. Initially, the ChildLine service was not supposed to be 24 hours. But they said, you know, at the end of the day, when all other services close, that is when we need to speak. And that is when we are looking for referrals. And if you are not going to have it 24 hours, it's not something that is meaningful to us. They insisted again, the kind of service that they needed. They began by, in the initial years, a lot of professionals had a lot of, well, they were a little skeptic about whether the service would work in a country like India. It was all okay for, you know, more developed countries where there was a culture of speaking and counseling. But the children from the streets insisted, no, there was a need for a tele-helpline, and, you know, they were a little upset with the professionals. And in fact, it took us 4 years of having dharnas, of, having rallies in front of Department of Telecommunications to tell us that we need a number which we can remember, the children can remember. They gave us initially a number which was a 7-digit number, and children were most unhappy with it. And it really, they went in front of the senior functionaries of telecommunications and demanded it and got a number for themselves. As I mentioned, ChildLine evolved from the needs of the children, and therefore a need that it has to be a day and night service was preeminent in the service. The service needed to be their service. It needed to be toll-free, obviously. Marginalized children obviously don't have access to money, and it definitely needed to be toll-free. It had to be a network of various services. They had issues of health, they had issues of shelter, they had issues of abuse, they had needs for sponsorship, they had needs in a crisis situation. So it couldn't be just a homogeneous kind of service, but a service that took into account all these differing kind of services and blended it into one. The name and logo, in fact, were discussed, and they were very clear that it had to have a happy face. It need not be, a sad child. They were extremely spirited children from the street, and they did not want to be perceived as someone really sad. So child participation in India has been really organic. It has been there right from inception. It has been there from the time when the children went to the streets to map what are the services available, to say where should the tele-helpline be, because it was going to be their service. Every ChildLine, before it starts, and India is a country of over 600 districts, and currently ChildLine in India is there in about 85 of those districts. Every time we start a ChildLine, it begins with children actually mapping the city, by mapping the services, the police lines that are there, the health services that are there, the transportation facilities that are there, the counseling services that are there. So they are very much an integral part, along with the social worker, to map how we structure a ChildLine in a particular district. We listen to them and accordingly formulate our plans. In fact, our mission and our vision are derived very much from these core values. ChildLine, we reach out to every child in need and ensure their rights and protection through the 4 C's, as we call them. Catalyze systems through active advocacy. Collaborate through integrated efforts between children. The state, the nation plays a very important part. Civil society organizations such as all of us out here. Corporate organizations and community. Connect through technology to reach the last mile. I think it's very important to us. And communicate to make child protections everyone's business. As you can see, participation is very integral. Every time we start, there is an open house. That is every month at a specific fixed time of the month. There is an open house where children come in. And there is an interesting story around it, that in the initial years when ChildLine had just begun, the children almost came to close down the service because we had, not intervened properly in a case where a child was suffering from tuberculosis in a station, in a central station in Mumbai. And they said, you are not doing your services properly, so we need you to close down. We had an interaction with them, we had a chat with them. That's when this evolution and this mechanism of open house came in, where it was felt it's important for them to give us feedback, for us to listen to them as service providers. And therein, it has become a particularly important mechanism of ChildLine. This basically, anytime a service does not give them 24-hour service, they call up the head office and tell us, you You say it's providing, these services are not being provided. We called, we were not responded to. Just an understanding of what open house is, where children address conflicts. They create awareness about 1098. Frequency of ChildLine children calling is checked. Get an opinion of the quality and quantity and promptness in intervention, and to learn from children what their issues are, and thereby to take it at the policy level for advocacy. Many of our child lines began with direct intervention from children, where they have pressed that they do need a certain service provided. And the story of ChildLine is one such, where they insisted. This young man called Manohar Das, and we actually went there and started the service. Of course, we have a day and night outreach program. A night outreach very essential because a lot of these children are working and they want a time of their own when they can listen. And they in turn help in creating this peer-to-peer outreach programs, the adults in the group. There are many Bal Sabhas and Bal Panchayats, councils that are created where they take their issues to the local offices. Many children who have received help from ChildLine, after they have got to know the service, again play a role as volunteers, as peer educators, to reach out to more children. As I already mentioned, they are integral part as we are starting in mapping of services, in creating the structure, in plotting all the important services that are there. ChildLine birthday party is a very important day for them. A lot of them do not know when they were born, where they were born, to whom they were born. So the birthday party becomes their very own. And this is a celebration of millions of street children across India on different days when they were started in their districts. An important thing the ChildLine did was to start formalizing this story of participation in our 10th year in 2006. And what we did was to have city-level meets with children, which then moved up to the state level and then to the national level, where the children presented themselves, much like you did today, but in front of government people who listened and for once, commented and took on issues related to health, related to education, related to a lot of their problems, core areas. I'm just going to leave you to read some of them. Not going to repeat. On education, their thoughts. Children in institutions who are often not given their dues. The police, I know people went here, but in a lot of countries the police do not play the kind of role that is expected of protection. On health issues, what are the challenges? I think some of the challenges are, difficulty in helping children understand the significance of their voice, that together they make a very, very strong stakeholder. I think that's important, and that's something that we try and do. Inability to involve the children to participate and voice their concerns. Often the children who call ChildLine are a very mobile population. They move in from one city to another, so the ability to put them together becomes difficult. Some outreach programs, setting. I don't think I'm going to go with other organizations, but I'll take you back to where we see our role. Children come in as beneficiaries, they join as volunteers, they often become employees as members of who reach out to people on phones, they become employee coordinator, and some of them go out to start ventures of their own. The other is from volunteers, they're taken into the ChildLine advisory boards. From there, at the city level, to the national level as part of the governing board. That is the dream that we have. We haven't gone so close to actually